Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Leslie Hammock, who's the founder of Retire by Design, and we'll be talking about the risks of retirement. Leslie, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hey, I'm looking forward to talking with you because I know that sometimes people don't like to hear negative things like risks in anything. But if we know some of the risk of retirement, then we can be prepared and put some things in place. So I know that I want to learn from what your years of experience have provided that you provide to your clients. But before we dive into that, give us a little bit of your background and story and how did you get into the financial services industry?
Well, it started on a sad note. My father, at age 50, was killed by a drunk driver when I was in college. But we were fortunate enough that he had a good advisor, especially on the estate planning side of the equation and life insurance side of the equation. And it made a big impression on me. And I felt like it was a noble business to go into. So I started my career on the insurance side of the equation with Mass Mutual right out of college, and spent about 13 years with them before I broke off and went independent and spread out and went back to school, so to speak, and got additional licenses for fee-based planning and assets under management, as well as my insurance and estate planning background.
And then how long have you been in the industry?
A little over 40 years. As I said, started right out of college.
Wow. That's been a minute or two. And I know you've seen a lot of trends and changes. I think it's really neat that you got into the industry because you saw something that happened and your parents were protected. And so you got into that side of the business, the insurance side. And then as time went by, you thought, insurance is just one small piece of a full, financial plan or planning for retirement. And then you got into more. So I know today we want to talk about risks in retirement. Talk a little bit about some of these risks. I know that, when you think about retirement, people typically think, I put my money in the market. Well, that could be risky, right?
Oh, exactly. I talk about the four colors of money with new clients or new prospective clients all the time. And I refer to the money in the market as red money, meaning that it's, people invest in it for the primary reason to hope to make better returns than anywhere else, but they have to be aware and willing to accept risk on the other side of the equation. I like to talk about the 5 risks of retirement. There's market risk, which you're referring to now. There's tax risk. There's longevity risk, interest rate and inflation risk, and one more big risk is the lack of planning for long-term care.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to touch on all of those because obviously you can probably do a weekend seminar on this and still not be going past scratching the surface. But let's talk just a little bit more about that market risk because it sounds to me like when money is in the market, you said it's red money because it's kind of like almost stop or be careful or because of that volatility. You turn the news on every day and you see the stock market's just up, down, and all around. How do you advise your clients to address that risk of volatility in the market?
Well, first of all, the proper diversification is really critical. Sometimes having investments in things that are non-correlated to the market on the downside. I refer to retirement planning as in 3 phases: the accumulation phase, the preservation phase, which is right at retirement, and the distribution phase, which is the most critical part. And without proper planning with diversification and having some different type of asset classes in your portfolio, you could suffer some severe damage to your retirement income if the downside happens at the wrong time, which I'll get into a little later, talking about sequence of returns and the risk of sequence of returns in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that it would be nice if we all had a crystal ball and knew when the market's going up and down, because then we'd get in and out. But we don't. So you have to take some precautionary measures. I know the other risk
Exactly.
you were talking about is tax risk, and some of these things we're talking about, these risks like market and tax and long-term care and inflation. These are things we cannot control. If we were talking about the risk of our exercise routine, well, we can just control that. We can eat better and we can exercise more. But these other risks, like taxes, we don't control those. How do you advise your clients in addressing tax risk?
Well, first of all, everyone needs to be aware and realize that tax laws change frequently. We've seen dramatic changes in the estate tax laws over the years. And right now, the holdup on the big, beautiful bill, as they talk about it, is some provisions in there about the debt, as well as the desire by one party to renew the tax cuts that happened back in 2017. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, we're going to see probably the largest tax increase in history. And clients have no control over that. So I think it's important to understand that you can't ignore taxes in your retirement. You've got to try to plan for it as best you can. One example that I give of that is something called IRMA. It has to do with Medicare. And a lot of people don't know what IRMA is all about. It's just spelled IRMAA, but it has to do with the amount of income that you have in retirement versus what your Social Security benefits are going to be and the cost of Medicare. This is a problem that if you have excess income over certain limits, you could literally lose your entire Social Security benefits by being up by the cost of Medicare. So we talk about that a good bit as well.
Yeah, that's
That's
a really good point.
That's part of the taxes question there, because having to pay more Medicare, it's like another tax, more tax on your Social Security.
And it kind of brings to my mind, I like that you use word pictures, like we call that red money, and
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.